big update today. The head of police, the Texas State Police, saying that police had enough officers and firepower on the scene of the Uvalde school massacre to have stopped the gunman 3 minutes after he entered the building. To break down not only this comment, but also everything surrounding the comments today and the response itself. A lot of the questions that we've had being answered today. Law enforcement expert David Katz. David, thanks for being with us here on the show. As always, we've gone back and forth about this investigation, and there's been a lot of fingers that have been pointed, and still that continues into today. I'm curious about that first statement, though. This all could have been stopped, according to Texas State Police.
Yeah, well, and apparently it could have been stopped before he even got into the school. So make no mistake, from the first moment this incident happened, we started getting a narrative that I think immediately recognized the abject failure of law enforcement. Now they're coming out with pictures. We did first. I mean, how bad can it get? I didn't have a key. I didn't have a tool. I didn't have a shield. I didn't have a rifle. And it turns out that all those things were present and the door was open, and they simply didn't go through.
So we're actually taking a look at one of those photos that was released from inside of the school itself. You make a great point. We're now getting new video. They even brought in the door, a door that shooter was on the inside of, to explain the lock situation. This now is inside one of the hallways at the school itself. They seem pretty prepared to be able to take on whatever was going inside of the classroom. How damning is this evidence?
Well, I mean, a couple things from the fact that they have a lot of personnel and long arms there. That's pretty damning. But I'm looking at those shields are level 3A shields. Those aren't even rifle rated shields. Plus, I don't know, guys, if you're watching this show, I don't know who taught you how to use shields or how to position your rifle fire, but you need a new instructor, because that first of all, if they're not rifle rated, they shouldn't be there. Number two, that positioning, I'll give you a chapter and verse on why that's probably the stupidest thing that they possibly could have done. Here's the bottom line. There is no waiting. There is no call. There's no establishing a perimeter. There is no establishing a command center. There's no determining who's the incident commander. The first officer on the scene goes. Why? Because if the bad guy has to fight for his or her life by shooting at the officer, if there's an exchange of gunfire, what is the bad guy not doing? The bad guy's not murdering children. And if the cop goes down, it's a tragedy, but the next cop goes. And we go until the shooter is neutralized. I can't make it any more plain than that. There is no waiting. If you're wearing a badge, you got to go.
David, I want to point out some of the points that were made today. We're hearing that officers with rifles, like we're seeing in this photo, stood in the hallway for over an hour. They say they were waiting in part for more weapons and gear before they finally stormed inside of the classroom and were able to kill the gunman, putting an end to the shots that were fired there. We heard from Steve McGraw, who is the director of the Texas State Department of Public Safety. He said, quote, "I don't care if you have on flip-flops and Bermuda shorts, you go in." Do you agree with that?
1,000% yes. I mean, I don't know, like, what more do they want? Did they want to roll in an armored vehicle? You've got a room full of children, terrified, crying for their parents, hoping that somebody's going to come in and save them. And these guys are outside. They have rifles, they have vests, they have helmets, and they're outside. And God knows why they're not given the order to execute. And that means execute the plan, not execute the shooter. You take the shooter out. But whether the shooter is ultimately killed or not is not the issue. You have to stop the shooter. I don't know what more they could have been waiting for.
There was a lot of confusion as to who actually was the one that was in charge when it comes to this scene. We've been hearing a lot about Pete Arredondo. He is the Uvalde School District Police Chief, who said that he was not in charge. In that DPS, he thought maybe that they were in charge. We haven't been hearing directly from him. He was questioned in a closed door hearing. We haven't heard from him with this public hearing today. Who kind of takes charge in situations like this? We had, of course, him. We had other authorities there. We had DPS. What is that system like when you get on a scene like this?
Well, there's a concept called incident command, and it's not necessarily the highest ranking officer present. I suppose in this instance, it's Arredondo because he's the chief. But typically, you would give that responsibility to the most senior, most capable person. And apparently, no one there had the understanding as to what was happening, or more importantly, what the proper protocol is. But forget that for a minute. What I think most people are missing, whether Arredondo was the commander, whether it doesn't matter who the commander is, the first officer on scene makes that determination. You know, like, I'll give you a good example. The New York City Police Department, if you look at their patrol guide with respect to active shooter, it says, quote, the officer shall make contact with the shooter. What does that mean? It doesn't mean wait for emergency services, wait for your sergeant, wait for the lieutenant, wait for the captain, wait for the deputy inspector. It means go in and stop the shooting. That's what it means. And that's what, you know, the argument about who was in charge, who was responsible ultimately, you know, for making the decision to hold, to go in. It's an absurdity. That should never have reached that decision or that stage point. It should have been taken care of by the first couple officers in, as we witnessed when those brave, intrepid Border Patrol tactical agents got there. They didn't wait for permission. They went in and took the guy out. And that's what should have happened, but an hour earlier before the children were murdered.
Well, so McGraw is saying today, because he was pressed on that from lawmakers, saying, well, why didn't they step forward? Why didn't the state troopers on the scene take charge immediately? And he's saying that the troopers actually didn't have legal authority to do so. What do you make of that?
They're state troopers, right? They're sworn law enforcement officers.
Yeah.
Does their duty get suspended when they cross into a school? That's nonsensical.
Okay. Well, they were pressed on a lot of different issues, including the security of the infrastructure of the building itself. We even have law enforcement bringing in a door from inside of the school there to explain the lock situation, because there's been a lot of discrepancies on whether or not the door was actually locked. We're now hearing that the door was propped open and then it was closed, but it still wasn't fully locked, which gave the gunman access to the inside here. Utilizing props like this and them showing all of this, do you think it's helpful for the investigation? What does this do for the investigation itself?
I don't understand the dog and pony show. I really don't. I know a lot of guys in the Texas DPS. I know a lot of the instructors. They are squared away. They know these things, the techniques and tactics that need to be implemented. What this stuff is ridiculous. But I will tell you this: the best plan, the whole idea of one hardened point of entry, you know, hardening the schools, making it difficult, if not impossible. I mean, never going to make it impossible, but difficult for a potential adversary to get into a school. That all fails if someone doesn't lock the door. And I mean, just yesterday, I was out, you know, in a couple areas past Austin, talking to some chiefs of police, talking to some school folks about some security measures. And in one of the schools, sure enough, there's a door propped open. I mean, just close the door. And if you're a school administrator and you have that problem, invest the money in a very loud, shrill alarm. If the door gets opened, the alarm goes off, and someone will come and close it. I mean, this is just axiomatic. You have to lock the door, because if that door was secure, if he couldn't breach or get past that doorway, none of this happens.
Right. This is significant for the police response, though, because we're hearing that officers were actually waiting for a key to be able to access the classroom, but it turns out the classroom cannot be locked from the inside, only from the outside. This is all Monday morning quarterbacking, of course, and we weren't the officers who were there on the scene. They had to make these decisions very quickly here, but it cost lives, 19 children and 2 teachers.
Well, if you remember that narrative, I think we discussed this last time I was on. The chief said he was trying different keys to open the door. Well, that had to be a lie. the door was never locked, and we knew the door wasn't locked. How? Because all this story about, well, we couldn't gain entry, we didn't have a key, we didn't have tools, we didn't have explosive breaching rounds, whatever they made up. When the Border Patrol got there, you know how they got in? They opened the door. So I'm not sure where all these tales were spun, but now we know that that in fact was not the case. And the officers, the first ones there, could have gotten entry into that classroom. Maybe they couldn't have saved all the children, but if they saved one, if one family had their child home, that's enough. Better all of them saved, but you have to act. You can't. You look. The bottom line is you cannot put the safety of the officer above the safety of the children. Period. If you are in law enforcement and you don't believe that, you are in the wrong job.
Hmm. So where do you believe the investigation goes from here? With all of this that has since been put on the table, we now have a clear timetable of what happened at every single minute of that hour that they were there. Where do you see it going from here?
Well, I'm quite sure they're going to apportion fault, and I think there's enough to go around. But that doesn't help the families who lost children. It doesn't help the surviving children who, for the rest of their life, are going to have that horror imprinted on them. So I think if the investigation has any bright side, I know that the state of Texas is putting aside money for school resource officers to have, for example, rifle resistant shields. And of course, I hope they get properly trained, because what we saw there ain't going to do it. You have to harden the school. You have to make it very, very clear that the school resource officer is not, someone with two months left on the job and they just stick that person in the place. We need to have warriors in the schools if we really want to keep the kids safe. And then of course, hopefully, the protocol will become very clear. You do not wait. You enter and you act.
Yeah. This is all very timely, as you said, as new gun legislation the text has been presented, and this likely will pass through. There's a massive bipartisan effort on this. It also is a larger conversation than just Uvalde, as we're seeing this in school districts across the country. Anything else that I didn't bring up, David, from today's hearing that you think is important to note about this investigation? We're all talking about the possibility of now litigation from the families that were involved with this. It's clear that is a very, very real possibility.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt there's going to be litigation, but more importantly, what's better, response or prevention? In our practice, we always preach to our clients, if you can identify a potentially problematic individual, someone with a or who's acting in a way that suggests a predilection toward violence, and you can identify that behavior and stop a violent act, isn't that better? It turns out that the shooter was not only well known to the community as being a deranged individual, but apparently one of this individual's teachers said, "This is the student I'm most afraid of." The guy's dressing like an active shooter. The guy's walking around with a bag of dead cats, and no one makes a report. No one brings that to the attention of law enforcement. And by the way, what we need to do is, I know there's arguments on both sides of the red flag law debate, but if we have anything that might make sense, if police identify somebody who's acting in this way, there should at least be a mechanism when that person tries to buy a firearm, there's at least a secondary level of scrutiny where someone says, well, hang on a second, before we authorize this sale, this person needs to get a little more scrutiny. Preserve all due process, but we don't want someone like that who's basically screaming to the world, I am going to hurt people. We don't want a person like that to get hold of any instrumentality that might make that a possibility. And that's what we need to learn. That's what we need to act on.
All right. Yeah, a lot of takeaways from this case here. David Katz, thanks for being with us here on the show. We appreciate it.
You're very welcome.